Stephen Doss, have you ever looked into geomancy and these crazy alignments? Yes. I actually just did a video on the demoness over Tibet, but all the ancient cultures did this, and there's just so many similarities between all of the ancient cultures. There's no way that they weren't connected, or I guess some would argue that they all had a familiar teacher. First off, if you look up geomancy today, it's going to refer you to this divination technique, much like the I Ching or tarot cards, where a practitioner may say that the fates intervene to give you a message. The true old school geomancy, however, can also refer to the practice of situating a temple or other structures in an auspicious, favorable, or harmonious location. I'm sure everybody's heard that the pyramids of Giza align with the three stars of Orion's belt. To the ancient Egyptians, Orion was Osiris, the god of resurrection and rebirth. I think that's an important detail, along with the fact that the Nile is a symbolic representation of the Milky Way above. So, what could you hope to accomplish by building an effigy of Osiris right next to the Nile? We don't have anything from the ancient Egyptians, but the Inca seem to be the last bloodline of the true ancients because they did all of these same things.
First off, credit where credit's due. This is anthropologist William Sullivan. He has spent some 25 years up in the mountains of Peru living with the descendants of the Inca. While there, he discovered that the old Spanish priests wrote down the legends of the Inca and didn't try to Christianize them or rationalize them, and they still hold the key details where a smart guy like Sullivan could decipher them. I bought his book, and it's academic research level, so it's really not that much fun to read, but definitely check out this documentary, Secret of the Incas. If you like documentaries, you won't be disappointed. Let's start with the legend. Long ago, since our grandparents tell us, there was a shepherd, and he went high in the mountains to visit his herds. When he got there, he found they were neither eating or drinking. Instead, they spent all night looking up at the stars and crying out. And the shepherd became angry. And he said, "What's wrong with you? I give you the best pastures, the best water to drink, and all you do is sit around crying out at the stars." And then the Lama said to the man, and the shepherd was shocked because it was as if a man had spoken to him. And the Lama said to him, "Do you see those stars rising over the mountain? Those stars mean that in exactly 1 month the world will be destroyed by a flood." And the shepherd believed him and took his family and went on top of the tallest mountain in the world. And as the rain came, and it rained until only the top of the mountain was sticking out of the water, it was so crowded on top of the mountain that the fox slipped and got his tail wet. And that's why to this day the fox's tail is black. I honestly about fell out when I heard that. So Sullivan learned all of the constellation and star names from the descendants of the Inca, and when you're high in the Andes at night, the Milky Way is right there. So they actually used the dark spots in the Milky Way for their constellations. And if you guys are like me, your jaw's going to drop when you hear all of this. Just like Egypt, all of their cities and monuments are set up according to the constellations above. You see how everything is along the river, and this is symbolic of the Milky Way, just like the Nile in Egypt. But it's also very practical. Everybody wants to be next to the water because you got to have it. And then you got Cusco off in the inhospitable mountains, away from the water as far as I can tell, where life doesn't look very convenient. So they went through a lot of trouble to mimic what's above. Here's the part that'll blow you away if I don't use it for the thumbnail and spoil it. See how you've got, starting from the right, the condor, the frog, the pyramid. Well, check this out. All of the terraces are built in the shape of a condor. See how it's kind of blending the natural lay of the land? And now that I'm looking at this, they probably carried more weight and water up here to keep plants alive than the dirt and rocks to build it. Water's heavy, and you'd have to get thousands of gallons a day up there. But then it gets pretty crazy. You've got this giant toad with giant tusks and two left hands. The eyes look like they're natural outcroppings. And then you get up to the next one, and this appears to be all natural as well. You got a bird looking away from you. And then everybody's heard of Ollantaytambo. Well, this is actually the llama. Close enough. I've seen worse. But here's the really cool part about it, though, is on the spring solstice, when the sun shines down the canyon, the first thing it hits is the temple they built on top of there. And that spot is the eye of the llama. Okay, it was a lot more dramatic when they told the story, and I don't know if that's the first thing it hits, but I like the story. Also, they terraced their crops down here in a one perspective pyramid, which I've never even heard anything close to that one. You have to climb up on the other side of the mountain to view it from that perspective, but it does look like it's intentional.
So why would you go through all of the trouble of planting your crops on terraces way up on the mountain when there's a flat valley floor down below right next to the water? Well, probably because a camel told you that when those stars set over that mountain, it's going to start raining, and if you're not on top of a mountain, then ask the fox. So you guys remember why the fox's tail is black, right? Sullivan said it took him 2 years of figuring all of this out in his head, and then when he did, he actually went to the planetarium and they took the machine and twisted it some to account for the precession of the equinox. When they did this, they came up with 2 dates, which we'll get to in a second. But on the summer solstice of these dates, as the constellation of the Camel was setting in the west, he's looking directly across the sky at the Pleiades rising just ahead of the sunset. And then the Inca actually doubled down on this, so you know that that's what's going on. And at the winter solstice of that year, just ahead of the sunrise, the fox is coming above the horizon and his tail is cut off by the mountain. So to me, this is just absolutely genius. It's a myth that is just weird enough that you're gonna remember all of the key details, but it is accurately passing on important information. And we're lucky that the Spanish priest actually just wrote it down as it was told, and then a smart guy like Sullivan comes along and figures all of this out.
Now, there's a lot to all this, so I'm going to simplify the best I can. One legend talks about Viracocha, which is the god Saturn, had come down to visit Manco Capac, and he left part of his staff behind. Unfortunately, Sullivan did miss this part, and I'm going to fill in the blanks here, but we're talking about what they're seeing up in the sky. So here is Viracocha's staff, and he said he left a part of it behind. So either plasma or, comet impact, something. Manco Capac was the first Inca, they call the king an Inca, of the New World Age. Manco Capac emerged from a cave after the last end of the world, and there's a legend where his golden staff will sink into the soil, and that's the right place to set up camp. Another legend tells of Pachacuti Inca. After it had rained for 30 days straight, he went up on the mountain to plead to the god Viracocha, who appeared as an old man with a beard. Now, for generations, they had prophesied that there would be a Pachacuti, which is the overturning of space-time. So the king himself was named Pachacuti Inca, and he was to be the last Inca of the world. Now watch how all of this ties together. The Inca, the king, was a representation of Jupiter on Earth. And when he goes up on the mountain to meet Viracocha, they're describing a great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. The last time this happened, Viracocha had left a piece of his staff behind, and in Pachacuti's time, after it had rained for 30 days straight, he appeared with a beard. These legends describe a beginning and end of world age. Now, a great conjunction really isn't anything special. It happens every 20 years, but there's a longer cycle of 40 great conjunctions that are, I guess, a great conjunction that are 800 years apart. Now, the two dates that they had found for the camel looking at the Pleiades at the solstice and the fox's tail is black are 650 AD and 1450 AD. And these dates lined up with this 800-year Great Conjunction cycle. And according to this legend, Manco Capac was the first Inca that emerged from a cave last time this happened. And the legend of Pachacuti Inca said that it had rained for 30 days straight, and they were afraid that there was going to be an overturn of space-time. Now get this. The Inca have their beginning and end of world age at 650 AD and 1450 AD, and over in Europe, you have the disaster cycle of 536 AD and the Black D at 1350 AD. Both of these indicating an 800-year cycle, but evidently the dates are off somewhere because they're exactly 100 years off from America to European history. I'm going to go with what the stars are saying. Hopefully you got the machine calibrated right.
Now, I'd already thought this about the Inca, but Sullivan kind of confirmed my suspicion that the Inca were the last of the true ancients. Europe had seen thousands of years of conquest that wiped out all of the ancient cultures, but the Inca were secluded over here in South America, and they lasted all the way up into the 1500s. So they're passing on knowledge that dates all the way back to ancient Egypt. All of the ancient cultures built their cities in alignment with the stars up above, so I would assume that they all did it for the same reasons. And Sullivan actually has a pretty good explanation of why that is.
It looks to me like the overall layout of the cities are symbolic of the Llama constellation. But you guys remember how the first condor is kind of using the natural landscape and then built into it. The frog appears to be pretty well all natural, so does this bird looking away. The llama at Ollantaytambo is carved straight into the cliff face. And they say they moved a ridiculous something 25 million tons of dirt to build this pyramid here. Now, I don't know if they named their constellations off of natural features that were here, or they just came along the river and noticed these and thought they should fill in the blanks. But Sullivan thinks the Inca believed as above, so below, and if the heavens can affect things here on earth, then things here on earth can affect the heavens. They knew when the camel saw the Pleiades rising, and then when the fox's tail is black, that's it, Pachacuti. The different levels of this are pretty amazing, but Sullivan thinks they were trying to stop the precession of the equinox. They weren't even concerned about the Pachacuti, they were resigned to their fate on that. And if there wasn't enough happening already, also at this time, the sun would no longer rise in the Milky Way, and they would lose their light bridge home to the stars. All the different tribes of the Andes believed that they were descendants of different stars, and since the time of Manco Capac, they had had nothing but conflict and civil wars. But knowing they were going to lose that light bridge that their ancestors had traveled, united them all in a common cause, and they became what we call the Inca today. Now, some people will say that the Inca didn't build Ollantaytambo because of these megalithic ruins, and I'd say you're right about that. These were most likely built by a culture of a former world age, and these cycles have been happening for thousands and thousands of years. But all of these terraces are made of relatively small stones compared to the megaliths, and the Inca just built on top of previous cultures. And as to whether or not they were built by giants, somebody cut in human-sized stairs. These might have been giants, I don't know.
So I think structures like Stonehenge, Adam's Calendar in South Africa, and they even found a Spanish Stonehenge during a drought a couple of years ago, were all built as calendars to keep track of the precession of the equinox and other celestial alignments. And just like Plato said, after a period of time, the usual inundations visit like a pestilence and leaves only those of you who are destitute of letters and education. And thus you have to begin over as children and know nothing of what happened in ancient times. I also think they were much more spiritually advanced than we are today, and they believed that they came from the stars, so this was part of their ticket home. If nothing else, at least now we all know why the fox's tail is black. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, touch my like thingy, and I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.